Why did it have to be you? My mother's voice sliced through the silence like a shard of glass. Her eyes, cold and razor-sharp, were fixed on my abdomen, on the fragile life growing inside me. For a moment, I forgot how to breathe. I stood there in her pristine living room, bathed in the golden light of late afternoon, holding the hand of the man I loved, and yet I had never felt more alone. My name is Elena Walsh. I'm 25 years old, married, and expecting my first child. And yet, none of those things mattered to my mother. To her, I had always been the mistake, the child who shouldn't have been born, the daughter who grew up in the shadow of perfection, the shadow of my sister, Sophie. Sophie is 3 years older than me, and to everyone outside our family, she's a beacon of warmth, smart, generous, and effortlessly charming. My mother used to say she was the kind of girl who could light up a room just by walking in, and it was true, at least for her. For me, things were different. The only light I knew was the one that flickered faintly through a half-closed door, warm, but never meant for me. I thought it might change. I really did. When I found out I was pregnant, I thought maybe, just maybe, this could be the bridge between me and my mother, her first grandchild, a chance to wipe the slate clean. I pictured her smiling, maybe even hugging me, like I used to see her do with Sophie. I imagined her fingers brushing gently over my growing belly, her voice soft for once, telling me she was proud. But reality had a way of crushing even the most delicate dreams. It was a quiet Sunday when my husband, Miles, and I drove out to visit my parents. Sophie knew we were coming. She'd been excited over the phone, asking if I was craving anything special, joking that I'd finally catch up to her in life milestones. She met us at the front door with that radiant smile of hers, her hair swept into a neat bun, her cardigan hanging loosely off one shoulder like something out of a catalog. "Elena," she beamed, pulling me into a hug. "It's been too long." Inside, the house hadn't changed. The same framed photos lined the hallway. Sophie's graduation, Sophie's dance recital, Sophie's awards. My face was in a few here and there, usually tucked into the background like an afterthought. Dad wasn't home when we arrived. He was out running errands. But he'd be back soon, Sophie assured us. Mom appeared from the kitchen a few moments later, wiping her hands on a dish towel, her expression tightening the moment she saw me. "Elena," she said flatly, then seeing Miles, her face shifted, smile wide, voice suddenly syrupy. "Oh my, I wasn't expecting company. Let me bring out something sweet for you two." Before I could answer, she disappeared into the kitchen and returned minutes later with a tray of homemade cookies, piled high with frosting and sugar. The kind of thing I couldn't stand. The kind of thing Miles had once mentioned he liked. "Oh, that's right," she cooed, setting the tray down. "Elena doesn't like sweet things, does she? I'm sorry, dear, but I remember Miles does." Her eyes lingered on my husband just a second too long. Miles smiled politely and reached for a cookie. "What I'm eating doesn't matter," he said, squeezing my hand under the table. "It's who I'm eating with that counts." She didn't respond, only nodded once and sat down. Her eyes flicked to the clock. We hadn't come for cookies. We hadn't come to pretend. I took a breath, deeper than I needed, and looked between Sophie and my mother. "We came today because we have something important to tell you." My mother didn't blink, but I saw it, the flash of something sharp in her eyes. Anticipation or suspicion. "I'm pregnant," I said. The room froze. Sophie gasped, then broke into a grin. "Oh my God, Elena! Congratulations!" She leapt up to hug me, her excitement genuine and unfiltered. My mother said nothing. Her smile vanished. She looked at me like I had just spit on her rug. Miles' phone rang, and he excused himself to take the call outside. Sophie offered to make tea. The moment she left the room, my mother leaned forward, voice low and trembling. "Why did it have to be you?" I stared at her. She continued, almost spitting the words. "The first grandchild should have been Sophie's, not yours. You're not. She stopped herself. But I already knew what she was going to say. The pain hit before I even understood what she'd done. A sudden kick to my stomach, and then all I could do was scream. The pain was immediate and blinding. It radiated through my entire abdomen like fire, searing and sharp, and I collapsed to my knees on the living room carpet. My hands instinctively cradled my stomach as I gasped for air. My mother didn't move. She just stood there, her arms still at her sides, breathing heavily, as if the act of kicking her pregnant daughter had somehow exhausted her. I couldn't speak. I couldn't even scream again. The only sound I made was a strangled whimper as the tears welled in my eyes and spilled down my cheeks. My body curled in on itself, as though trying to shield the baby. My baby. Elena! Sophie's voice rang out from the hallway, followed by the clatter of a teacup hitting the floor. She rushed into the room, and what she saw must have shattered the image she'd always held of our mother. Her eyes darted from me to the woman standing above me. Our mother, the woman we were raised to trust. Mom, what the hell did you do? Sophie's voice cracked, her hands trembling. She tripped, my mother said, quickly, too quickly. She bumped into the corner of the coffee table. That's all. Don't be dramatic. Don't lie. Sophie screamed, dropping to her knees beside me. I saw you. You kicked her, Mom. You! The front door burst open, and Miles rushed in, his face pale, his phone still in his hand. He took one look at me on the ground, at Sophie clutching my shoulders, and then at my mother, calm, composed, detached. Elena! He whispered, kneeling next to me. I'm here. I've got you. My body shook as I tried to focus on his voice. The pain wasn't going away. If anything, it was getting worse. Miles wrapped his arms around me carefully, protectively, as if afraid he might cause more damage. I'm calling an ambulance, Sophie said. We don't know how bad it is. She's pregnant. Oh my God, what if? What if something happens to the baby? I'm fine, I lied, my voice barely audible. I'm fine, but I wasn't. The truth was, I'd never been more terrified in my life. My mother stood there, arms crossed now, her expression unreadable. You're all overreacting, she said flatly. She's just being emotional. She always was. Stop talking, Miles snapped, his tone ice cold. If something happens to her, or the baby, I swear. The siren of the ambulance grew louder in the distance. Time seemed to slow. Sophie stayed by my side, her hands shaking, eyes red with tears. Miles never let go of me. When the paramedics arrived, they moved fast. Questions blurred together. How far along? Where the pain was, could I feel movement? I heard myself answering some of them, but I couldn't remember what I'd said. I was lifted onto a stretcher, the cold surface sending a shiver through my spine. As they wheeled me out of the house, I caught one last look at my mother. She stood at the doorway, arms folded, that same dead expression on her face. No fear, no guilt, just resentment. But in her eyes I saw it, a concentrated hatred. The same hatred I had felt since I was old enough to understand emotions. She didn't want me to be the mother of her first grandchild. She didn't want me to have anything she hadn't given to Sophie first. Miles followed the ambulance in his car. Sophie rode with me, holding my hand the entire way. I turned my head toward her, my voice barely a whisper. You saw her, didn't you? She nodded. I did. I'm so sorry, Elena. I never realized. Outside the window, the city lights blurred into streaks as we sped toward the hospital. My body ached, but my mind was heavier. This wasn't just about a baby. This wasn't just about today. It was about years, decades, of being unloved, unseen, unchosen. And now I knew. I would never step foot in that house again. Not as a daughter. As I lay back and closed my eyes, I whispered a vow I hadn't known I was ready to make. If I survived this, if my baby survived this, I would never let that woman have a place in our lives again. The hospital room was quiet except for the steady beeping of the monitor beside me. I lay motionless on the narrow bed, my hands resting gently over my belly, trying to feel something, anything, that would tell me my baby was still okay. The pain had dulled to a deep, throbbing ache, but the terror hadn't gone anywhere. Miles was still handling paperwork. Sophie sat beside me, her fingers lightly gripping mine, as if letting go might break me further. Her eyes were swollen from crying. I stared at the ceiling, unable to speak, until my mind, without asking, began to drift, not into sleep, but into memory. It started with a Christmas morning. I was 8, Sophie was 11. The living room was lit by twinkling lights, the tree perfectly decorated, gifts wrapped with shiny ribbons stacked beneath it. Sophie went first, tearing into a big red box with her name in elegant script. Inside was a brand new designer dress, trendy, expensive, and absolutely perfect for her. My mother clapped her hands with pride. It's perfect for Sophie. She's my daughter, after all. Then came my turn. My box was smaller, wrapped more carelessly. I opened it to find plain jeans and a t-shirt. The tag still stuck on the shirt said it was from the clearance rack at a discount store. My mother smiled tightly. These suit you better, Elena. There. More your style. I said nothing. I was used to it by then. It wasn't just clothes. At dinner, Sophie always got the bigger slice of cake. My mother would encourage her to eat more, push second helpings onto her plate. You're still growing, sweetheart. Have another. But when I reached for seconds, she'd raise an eyebrow. You should watch that, Elena. You don't want to lose your figure. The words always came with a smile, but they cut deeper than any scolding. In school, Sophie was the shining star, head of the cheerleading squad, lead in school plays. My mother never missed a single performance. She'd sit in the front row, camera in hand, clapping louder than anyone. I joined the track team. I was good. I broke a few records in my age group, but my mother never showed up to any meets. I'm busy, she'd say. Track isn't exactly exciting, is it? Sometimes Dad came. He'd pat my head and say, "You did great," before leaving for work again. He never noticed the imbalance. Or maybe he did and chose to stay quiet. It wasn't until high school that I truly realized something was wrong. I was talking to my best friend Lena one day, telling her about the birthday gift I'd gotten. Another set of generic pajamas. Lena frowned. Wait, your mom gives your sister all those designer outfits, but you get pajamas? I shrugged. She says I don't need fancy stuff. My mom would never do that to me, Lena said gently. That's not normal, Elena. Her words hit harder than I expected. It was the first time someone else saw it, named it. The difference, the divide, the quiet cruelty. Still, Sophie had no idea. She thought I liked simple clothes. You have such a great figure, she'd say. You look good in anything. She meant it. She really didn't know. But when she wasn't around, when no one was, my mother turned cold, even vicious. She never hit me. Not until today. But her words? Her words were weapons. It should have been just Sophie. You were a mistake. Why can't you be more like her? I had to give up so much for you, and for what? She never said those things when Dad was home. Never with Sophie in the room. Only when we were alone, like she wanted me to know that the love she gave others was conditional, and I didn't meet the conditions. By 16, I had stopped hoping. I stopped crying, too. Crying made her worse. And yet, despite everything, part of me still wanted her approval. Still wondered what it would feel like to hear, "I'm proud of you," just once. That desire stayed buried deep, even as I built walls around it. When I turned 16, Lena and a few friends threw me a surprise party at the park. They gave me a small makeup kit, nothing fancy, but it was mine, chosen just for me. I still have it, tucked away in a drawer. It was the first time I felt seen, celebrated, worth something. And maybe that's when I started planning my escape. The day I realized that love shouldn't have to be earned. That maybe I could find a different kind of family, one I'd choose, one that chose me back. I left home the summer after high school graduation. I didn't tell my mother until the night before I packed my things. She was in the kitchen, slicing vegetables with practiced precision, as if even that mundane act could be used to demonstrate control. I stood in the doorway, my voice barely above a whisper. "I'm moving out tomorrow." She didn't stop slicing. "And where do you think you'll go?" "I got a room near the diner. I'll keep working there until I find something better." She finally looked up. Her expression didn't change. "With just a high school diploma?" She almost laughed. "You'll come crawling back." I didn't answer. I didn't try to change her mind. I simply walked away. That night, I packed my things in silence. Sophie had already left for college months earlier, with Mom proudly dipping into their savings to cover tuition. "It's worth it for Sophie," she had said. No one had ever saved anything for me. Not money, not time, not kindness. And yet, walking out that door, I felt lighter than I had in years. Terrified but free. The first year on my own was brutal. I worked full-time at the diner, covering shifts for people who didn't show up, dealing with rude customers, and coming home to a tiny, overheated studio apartment with peeling wallpaper and a leaky faucet. But it was mine. Every cup of instant noodles, every second-hand pillow, every dollar I saved, it was all mine. I applied for office jobs constantly, printing resumes at the library, dressing in my best, still wrinkled shirt. At every interview, when they saw high school diploma under education, their smiles thinned. "We'll be in touch," they'd say. But I kept trying. 37 applications later, I landed a job as a receptionist at a local IT company. It wasn't glamorous, but it was a start. That's where I met Miles. He was a systems engineer, the kind of guy who always had a quiet joke tucked behind a smile. We first spoke when I was struggling with the copy machine. It had jammed for the third time that week, and I was ready to scream. Miles walked by, chuckled softly, and said, "Looks like it's personal now." I rolled my eyes. "If it doesn't work this time, I'm throwing it out the window." He helped me fix it in under 5 minutes. After that, he started stopping by my desk during lunch breaks. At first, it was casual conversations about work, the best coffee shops nearby, weekend plans. But then one afternoon, I mentioned I was still taking night classes. He looked surprised. "You work full-time and study at night." I nodded. "I'm trying to catch up. My mother didn't believe in wasting money on someone like me." Something in his face shifted, not pity, but something warmer. Something like understanding. From there, the conversations grew deeper. I told him about Sophie, about growing up invisible, about the words my mother never said. I waited for him to pull away, to react like everyone else had, like I was too much. But he didn't. Instead, he held my gaze and said, "No one has the right to erase your worth." It was the first time anyone had ever said something like that to me, and somehow I believed him. We started dating a few months later. It wasn't a whirlwind romance. It was slow, steady, honest. The kind of love that grows like a tree, roots deep, branches strong. He never made promises he couldn't keep. He just kept showing up. Every day, every time. By the end of our second year together, I had been promoted to office coordinator. I was training new hires, managing schedules, and for the first time, earning enough to dream of something more. Miles was already talking about saving for a house. He was always thinking ahead, always thinking of us. And then, one chilly December night, after the company holiday party, we walked through the glowing streets of downtown, fingers laced, cheeks pink from the cold. He stopped suddenly beneath a string of twinkling lights. "Elena," he said, pulling out a small box, "will you marry me?" I didn't hesitate. Yes. That single word felt like the closing of one chapter and the start of another, a chapter one had written on my own terms. 2 years had passed since I left home. I hadn't set foot in my parents' house since the day I moved out, and truthfully, I never planned to. But when Miles and I got engaged, something stirred inside me. Some naive, aching part of me that still wanted to be acknowledged. Not loved, not even liked. Just Seen. So I made the call. Sophie picked up on the first ring. Oh my God, Elena, are you serious? That's amazing, she squealed. When are you coming over? Mom and Dad will be thrilled. Thrilled. I knew better. Still, I agreed to come by. Just a short visit. Just to share the news. We arrived that Sunday afternoon. Miles wore the soft blue sweater I liked, and I had on a simple cream dress with a gold pennant resting just above my heart. The one gift Dad had ever given me that felt truly mine. The house looked the same. It always did. Frozen in time. Stiff with perfection. Sophie met us at the door, practically vibrating with excitement. She threw her arms around me and then hugged Miles too, her smile contagious. Okay, show me the ring. I held out my hand. She gasped. It's beautiful, Elena. I'm so happy for you. Dad came into the room next, his newspaper tucked under one arm. Miles, he said, offering a hand. Good to see you again. Then he turned to me. Congratulations, sweetheart. He seems like a good man. My heart hiccuped at the word sweetheart. It felt foreign coming from him. Gentle, unfamiliar. I almost forgot how it felt to hear kindness from my father. Then she appeared. My mother, Vivian Walsh, descended the stairs slowly, deliberately. She was dressed in tailored gray slacks and a pearl-colored blouse. Her hair, as always, was flawless. Her eyes, as always, unreadable. Elena, she said, her lips curving into a smile that didn't reach her eyes. What brings you here today? I opened my mouth, but Sophie beat me to it. Elena's engaged. Look at the ring. My mother took my hand, examined the ring like she was inspecting merchandise, then looked at Miles. An engineer, right? Miles nodded. Yes, ma'am. I work in systems architecture. Her expression brightened. Not with joy, but calculation. Oh, well, that's respectable. And just like that, the air shifted. Her disapproval vanished behind a mask of civility. She turned to me, smile still glued in place. You're lucky, Elena. I suppose things do work out sometimes, even for people like you. There it was, the backhanded compliment, the reminder. I was still the mistake. We sat down for tea. She had pulled out her fine china, the floral kind she only used for guests. I wasn't sure if that meant she was trying to impress Miles, or trying to remind me that I never belonged at this table. You know, she said between sips, I always thought Sophie would be the first to marry. She's more traditional. Sophie laughed lightly. Mom, stop. I'm in no rush. I stared at my cup. The porcelain felt cold. Later, while Sophie and Dad looked through old photo albums with Miles, my mother pulled me aside in the hallway. I don't think this will last, she said softly, too softly. You don't have what it takes to keep a man like him. I didn't react. Not at first. I used to think you'd come back home, tail between your legs, she continued. But you're stubborn, just like your father. Still, I said nothing. I didn't need to, because for once, her words didn't touch me. She leaned closer, lowering her voice. You don't deserve this. You know that, right? I looked her dead in the eye. Maybe not, but I earned it anyway. And I walked away. That night, Miles and I drove home in silence. When he finally spoke, his voice was calm. I saw the way she looked at you. I glanced at him. I'm sorry. You don't have to be, he said. Just promise me something. What? That she'll never get to make you feel small again. I reached over and took his hand. I promise. The test strip turned pink almost instantly. I stared at it for a long time, sitting alone in our bathroom, knees hugged to my chest. It felt surreal, like the world had tilted slightly, like gravity had changed its rules. My fingers trembled as I reached for the phone. I didn't even text Miles. I just walked into the living room, still barefoot, still in my pajamas, and held the test out to him like it was a sacred object. He blinked, looked at it, then looked at me. And then he grinned. Elena, he whispered, pulling me into his arms. We're going to be parents. He kissed my forehead, again and again, laughing and crying at the same time. I didn't know what I was supposed to feel. Joy, fear, hope, but in that moment his happiness wrapped around me like a blanket, steady and warm. And for the first time in a long time, I let myself believe that maybe, just maybe, everything was going to be okay. His parents were over the moon. Within hours, they were at our apartment with catalogs, stroller reviews, and soup and thermoses. His mom insisted on helping with nursery ideas, while his dad gave Miles an awkward but heartfelt pep talk about fatherhood. I watched it all unfold like I was standing just outside the glass, awed, unsure if I deserved to be inside it. And then, of course, came the question I'd been avoiding. "Have you told your parents yet?" Miles asked one evening as we folded tiny onesies and arranged them in drawers we hadn't even finished assembling. I hesitated. "They weren't exactly thrilled about our engagement," I said, keeping my tone neutral. "But this is different," he replied gently. "A baby. It changes things." And maybe he was right. Maybe this child, this innocent new life, could be the bridge, the reset. I imagined my mother's face softening, imagined her touching my belly with curiosity, imagined, for the first time, belonging. I texted Sophie first. "Hey, can we come by Sunday? We have something to share." She replied instantly. "Of course. I'll tell Mom and Dad. Can't wait to see you." Sunday morning came wrapped in soft spring sunlight. I wore a simple dress that stretched gently over my bump. Miles looked at me like I was made of glass and wonder. On the drive over, I held his hand and whispered, "Do you think this will change anything?" He squeezed my fingers. "Maybe not, but we're changing everything. That's what matters." When we arrived, Sophie greeted us with her usual brightness, her arms instantly around me. "You're glowing," she said. "I swear, pregnancy suits you." Dad was out running errands, but expected back soon. My mother appeared a few minutes later. Her eyes swept over me, paused at my belly, then shifted to Miles. She smiled. Not at me, at him. "Oh, I wasn't prepared for visitors. Let me see what I have in the kitchen," she said, disappearing before either of us could respond. She returned moments later with a plate full of cookies, sickly sweet, the exact kind she knew I hated. "Oh, that's right," she said, tilting her head with mock concern. "You don't like sweets, Elena, but Miles does, right?" Miles, ever gracious, smiled and took one. "What I'm eating doesn't matter. Who I'm eating with does." I reached for his hand beneath the table, grounding myself. I was here for a reason. We had something important to say. Once everyone was seated, I took a breath. "We came today because we wanted to tell you something." My mother's expression didn't change, but something in her eyes flickered. Anticipation, or dread. "I'm pregnant." Silence. Sophie gasped, her face lighting up. "Oh my God, Elena, seriously." "Congratulations." She threw her arms around me, laughing through her excitement. My mother didn't speak. Her smile vanished. She looked at me like I had committed some kind of crime. A slow, calculating storm began to build in her gaze. Miles' phone rang. He excused himself to take the call outside. Sophie offered to make tea. And the second we were alone, my mother turned to me. The shift was instantaneous. Her voice dropped to a whisper, sharp and trembling. "Why did it have to be you?" I stared at her. "What?" "The first grandchild," she spat. "It should have been Sophie's, not yours." I felt my heart stumble. "Someone like you," she said, her voice shaking with barely contained rage, "doesn't deserve to carry the future of this family." And then, without warning, she moved. Her leg came up in a violent arc, and all I remember is the pain, bright, shattering, and the sound of my own scream tearing through the air. The scream that tore from my throat wasn't just pain, it was decades of silence shattering in one breath. I crumpled onto the floor, hands clutched to my stomach, the world tilting sideways. The breath was knocked out of me. I couldn't speak. I couldn't move. I just lay there, curled in instinctive protection, hoping to God that my baby was still alive. Elena! Sophie's voice sliced through the air like a siren. She had returned with a tray in her hands, only to drop it, ceramic shattering on hardwood, when she saw me on the floor and our mother standing rigid nearby. Mom, what did you do? Sophie's voice cracked, horror creeping in. She bumped into the dresser, my mother said flatly, as if reading from a script. She tripped. Don't overreact. Sophie didn't move. I saw it. I saw you. You kicked her. I heard Miles shouting outside. A moment later, the front door slammed open. His footsteps thudded against the floor, and then he was kneeling beside me, his arms reaching gently. Elena, look at me. Stay with me. You're okay. I'm here. His voice trembled, but his hands were steady. I clung to the sound of him, let it anchor me to reality. Sophie had her phone to her ear. I'm calling an ambulance. We need help now. She's pregnant. She's not moving. My mother stood nearby, unmoved. Arms crossed like this was a scene she'd grown bored of. This is absurd, she muttered. Everyone's being dramatic. You always were, Elena. The sirens approached in the distance. Time slowed again. My world was pain and heat and fear. And shame, because even as I lay bleeding on the floor, some part of me still wished she would kneel down and say I'm sorry. She didn't. Paramedics rushed in moments later. Questions flooded the room. Miles answered most of them. Sophie helped steady my head while they loaded me onto the stretcher. She was crying now, repeating, It's okay. We're going to the hospital. They'll take care of you. I'm so sorry, Elena. I didn't know. I should have known. As we rolled past the living room, I turned my head just slightly and locked eyes with my mother. She didn't look away. Her stare was cold, unblinking. Not worried. Not remorseful. Just furious. Like I had betrayed her. That was when I knew. There would be no fixing this. No apology. No redemption. Whatever part of her was meant to be my mother had withered a long time ago. At the hospital, everything moved in fast, sterile fragments. Bright lights, rolling wheels, gloved hands. They hooked me up to machines, placed cold gel on my stomach, whispered between themselves. But then I heard it. The heartbeat. Tiny. Fast. Alive. Tears streamed down my cheeks, and I reached for Miles' hand. She's okay. I whispered. The doctor gave a tight nod. There's a small fracture in your lower pelvis, but the fetus appears unharmed. We'll need to monitor you for a few days. A rush of relief surged through me, so violently I thought I might pass out. Sophie let out a sob behind me. A few hours later, while I lay resting in a dim room, the door opened. I turned my head. It was my father, and behind him my mother. Is it true? He asked, his voice rough, frayed around the edges. Did you hit her? I didn't, my mother started, her voice too light, too rehearsed. Elena was clumsy. She tripped into the dresser, that's all. That's not what I saw. Sophie stood up, her voice no longer trembling. I saw you kick her, Mom, right in the stomach. My father looked like someone had punched him in the chest. He turned to me. Elena. I nodded slowly. She did. And then another voice spoke from the doorway. May I come in? A woman stepped inside, wearing a navy blazer and a calm but firm expression. I'm the hospital social worker. I need to speak with you about what happened. My mother's face drained of color. What is this? She snapped. This is protocol when a pregnant woman is admitted with physical trauma, especially when a witness accuses a family member. I'm being made into a villain, my mother cried suddenly. Everyone's ganging up on me. She's always been dramatic, that girl, always lying, always. That's enough. My father's voice, for the first time in my life, was sharp, final. Vivian. Stop. The social worker turned to me. Elena, You have the right to file a formal complaint. Given the circumstances, we can also discuss a protective order." My mother went silent, and I, for the first time in 25 years, spoke without fear. "Yes," I said. "I want to tell you everything." The room fell quiet after my words. "Yes, I want to tell you everything." The social worker nodded, her eyes steady and kind, a quiet invitation for truth. Sophie sat beside me again, hands clenched on her lap, bracing herself. My father stood by the window, staring blankly out at the parking lot, his shoulders rigid. And my mother, Vivian, stood stiff near the door, arms crossed, her mouth pressed into a thin line, as if she was holding back the urge to lash out. But this time she was not in control, and I was no longer the girl who flinched at her every sigh. I took a deep breath. "For as long as I can remember," I began. My mother treated Sophie like the only daughter she ever wanted, and me like a mistake she couldn't return. Sophie gasped softly, but didn't interrupt. She gave Sophie everything: attention, affection, praise. Me, I got silence, or worse, correction. When I was 8, Sophie got a brand name dress for Christmas. I got jeans from a clearance bin. When she had recitals, Mom sat in the front row with a camera. When I broke a track record, she said, "That's nice," and went back to her phone. Vivian rolled her eyes. "Oh, please, that's not abuse." "Let her speak," the social worker said firmly. I continued, my voice steadier now, stronger. She'd serve Sophie's second helpings of dessert, saying, "Eat up, honey, you're still growing." But when I reached for more, she'd say, "You should watch your figure, Elena. You gain weight in your face." Sophie covered her mouth. When we were alone, I said she was worse. The insults came like clockwork. "You're nothing like me. You ruin my body. You'll never become anything worthwhile." And if I cried, she mocked me, called me dramatic, weak. I looked at my father then. He was still staring out the window, but now his hands were clenched at his sides. "Dad," I said quietly, "I didn't tell you because I thought you wouldn't believe me. Because she always played the doting mother when you were around. You never saw the way she changed when it was just me and her." He turned, slowly. "Elena," his voice cracked. "I didn't know. I swear. I should have seen it. I should have." "You weren't there," I said. "Not really. You were always working. And when you were home, you trusted the image she gave you." Silence. Then a voice broke it. "Oh, for God's sake!" Vivian exploded, stepping forward. "You all act like I'm some kind of monster. I raised 2 girls, one of whom turned out to be a spoiled useless." Her voice cut off as my father turned to face her fully, and for the first time in my life, I saw anger in his eyes. Cold, clear, righteous. "Vivian," he said, his voice low and terrifyingly calm, "you are unfit to be a mother." She blinked. "What?" "You abused our daughter for years. You played favorites. You lied to me. You made her believe she was worthless. And now, after everything, you kicked her while she was carrying our grandchild." Vivian's face twisted into something unrecognizable. "So now it's my fault? She's always been fragile, emotional, difficult. She looks like you know that? Not like me. That's the problem. Sophie is enough." Sophie stood suddenly, her chair screeching against the floor. Her voice, though trembling, was louder than I had ever heard it. "I loved you, Mom. I thought you were proud of both of us. But now, I don't even know who you are." Vivian's mouth opened and closed like a fish out of water. She looked around, as if expecting someone to come to her defense. No one did. The social worker cleared her throat gently. "Given the incident and the testimony, I recommend filing a restraining order immediately. This is not just a family dispute. It's a documented act of violence against a pregnant woman. That elevates the matter." Vivian's voice trembled now, not with authority, but desperation. "You're siding with her? She's ungrateful. After everything I did, you didn't raise me," I interrupted, my voice calm now. You made sure I survived. That's not the same thing. My mother stared at me, eyes wild, and then she snapped. She lunged toward my hospital bed, hands reaching for my arm. You little liar, after I gave you life, after I— Don't touch her! Miles roared as he burst into the room, blocking her in one stride. My father grabbed Vivian's arm. Vivian, that's it. Nurses flooded in. Security was called. My mother was restrained and escorted out, still screaming, still convinced she was the victim. I exhaled slowly, chest heaving. That was the last time I would ever see her face. That night, the hospital halls were quieter than usual. The nurses spoke in hushed tones, their steps soft as they passed by my room. A blanket of stillness had settled over everything, broken only by the steady beeping of the fetal monitor beside me. Miles sat beside my bed, his fingers laced with mine, his other hand gently stroking the hair from my forehead. You're safe now, he whispered. She's gone. But safety, I was learning, wasn't just physical. It was a feeling, a permission, something I had never fully allowed myself. Until now. Later that evening, my father returned to the hospital alone. There was something different in his face, not brokenness, not shame, but resolve. I spoke to the police, he said quietly. They're opening a case. The hospital filed a formal report. And I filed for divorce. For a moment, I couldn't speak. Then I nodded. Slowly. Thank you. He sank into the chair beside me and covered his face with both hands. I don't know how I let it go on for so long. I should have seen it. I should have protected you. I failed you, Elena. I reached out and placed my hand over his. You're here now. The court issued a restraining order within 48 hours. Vivian was prohibited from contacting or coming within 100 yards of me, Miles, or our unborn child. She was released into the custody of her sister in another state while the investigation proceeded. But she didn't go quietly. She sent voice messages, long, venomous recordings filled with rage and self-pity. You made me lose everything. You poisoned your sister and your father against me. You'll regret this when you're alone and forgotten. I didn't respond. I didn't even listen to them all. I just saved them, each one a nail in the coffin she had built with her own hands. But not everyone left me behind. Sophie came to visit me every day. She brought homemade soup, baby name books, and sometimes just her presence. One afternoon, she sat beside me, watching me knit tiny booties with trembling hands. I was blind for so long, she whispered. And I'm so sorry. You didn't know, I said softly. She didn't want you to. But I should have asked. Should have wondered why you never smiled like I did in our childhood photos. I looked at her, really looked at her, and saw the weight she was carrying. Guilt, grief, a sister's pain. I reached for her hand. I don't want to lose you two. You won't, she said, squeezing back. I'm not leaving. My father began coming by more often as well. He brought books on parenting, offered to repaint the nursery once I was home, and even installed baby gates without being asked. One day, while adjusting the crib in our small apartment, he looked up and said, I know I'm late, but I want to do it right, from now on. And somehow I believed him. Miles' parents, my in-laws, became family in every sense of the word. His mother hand-stitched baby blankets. His father carved a wooden mobile for the crib. They visited often, bringing not just casseroles, but a sense of quiet normalcy. No tension, no judgment, just love. For the first time in my life, I was surrounded by people who saw me, not through the lens of comparison or disappointment, but simply as Elena, a woman, a wife, a soon-to-be mother. Enough. The baby, our daughter, was due in just a few weeks. We named her Isla. The name meant island, and somehow that felt right. She would be her own world, untouched by the cold hands of the past. One morning, as I lay in bed watching the sunlight spill across the window, Sophie walked in holding a small onesie with tiny embroidered bears. Look what I found, she said with a smile. think Isla will approve." I laughed. She has no choice. Sophie sat beside me, brushing my hair back like we were kids again. "You're going to be such a good mom." My throat tightened. "I hope so." "You will," she said, "because you know what not to be." That night, I lay awake listening to Isla's heartbeat through the monitor. I thought of Vivian's voice, sharp and bitter, and let it fade into static. I didn't need revenge in the form of her suffering. I didn't need an apology she'd never mean. I didn't even need her absence. What I had now, this quiet, this love, this life, was the real revenge, because I had become everything she said I'd never be. The contractions began just after midnight. At first, they were faint, dull aches that came and went, easy to mistake for anxiety. But by 3 a.m., they arrived with intention, like waves rolling harder against the shore. Miles was already halfway dressed when I whispered, "It's time." He helped me to the car, one hand on the small of my back, the other cradling the overnight bag we'd packed weeks ago. As we drove through the empty streets, I pressed my palm to my belly, whispering soft reassurances to the tiny life inside me. "We're almost there, sweetheart. Just a little longer." The hospital admitted me immediately. Sophie arrived 20 minutes later, hair still damp from sleep, eyes wide but steady. My father came just before sunrise, pacing the hallway, coffee untouched in his hand. The nurses came and went like quiet warriors, monitoring, adjusting, guiding. Hours passed. Pain bloomed and ebbed in sharp rhythms. My body felt like a battlefield, stretching, trembling, surrendering to something greater than itself. Miles never left my side. Sophie rubbed my back. My father prayed under his breath. And then came the moment. The doctor leaned over me, voice calm but urgent. "Elena, just one more push." I had nothing left, but I gathered what I could. I clenched Miles' hand and pushed with everything I had left in me. Every scar, every word I had swallowed, every tear I didn't cry, all of it poured into that final breath. And then a cry, loud, furious, beautiful. "It's a girl," the doctor smiled. "A strong, healthy baby girl." The room exhaled. They laid her on my chest, this tiny, red-faced miracle with clenched fists and a scream that filled every empty space I'd ever carried. My vision blurred as I reached for her, cradling her soft body against mine. Her warmth sank into my skin like sunlight. "Hi, Isla," I whispered. "I'm your mama." Miles was crying openly now, kissing my forehead, my hand, our daughter's head. Sophie stood nearby, both hands over her heart, tears streaming silently. My father entered the room slowly, almost reverently. When he saw Isla, his face crumpled. "She looks like you did the day you were born," he said, voice thick. "Except you didn't cry this loud." I smiled weakly. "She's letting the world know she's here." The days that followed were a blur of recovery and discovery. Isla's first yawn, the way she gripped my finger like it was her lifeline, the warm weight of her sleeping on my chest, the softness of her breath against my collarbone. All of it was new. All of it was holy. Miles' parents visited the next day, arms full of knitted blankets and homemade soup. His mother held Isla like she'd been waiting her whole life to meet her. "You and this baby," she said to me, "you are our precious girls." Sophie came every morning. She'd bring fresh flowers, warm muffins, and stories from outside. "Anything interesting happen today?" she'd ask Isla, making exaggerated faces that made her niece hiccup with baby giggles. My father, newly retired, became the quiet guardian of our small world. He came every weekend, taking long walks with Isla bundled to his chest, humming lullabies I barely remembered from my own childhood. One day, he sat beside me while Isla napped in her bassinet. "You've done so well," he said, almost to himself. "You've become a wonderful mother." I didn't reply right away, because those words, so simple, so overdue, carried more weight than he would ever know. They broke something open inside me, And in the best way, they put something back together, too. I kissed Isla's forehead that night as the sun set outside our hospital window. The trees swayed gently in the breeze, and for the first time in my life, I didn't feel like a mistake. I felt like a beginning, because that's what she was. Not just a child. She was a new chapter, a new name, a new legacy, not born of pain, but born despite it. 3 months passed. Spring melted quietly into early summer, and our days found a rhythm. Bottles, lullabies, midnight feedings, diaper changes, and soft, sleepy cuddles that made the world outside feel like a distant memory. Isla was growing fast. Her cheeks had filled out, her lashes had darkened, and her little fingers now gripped tighter when I held her close. She had Miles's calm eyes, but the stubborn lift of her chin, that was mine. The last message my mother ever sent arrived the week after Isla was born. It was a voice memo, just under 15 seconds. I didn't play it right away, but one afternoon, while Isla napped in her crib and sunlight filtered through the curtains, I sat on the couch and pressed play. I'll never forgive you. You ruined everything. You made me lose my family. That was it. No hello, no goodbye, just the same venom, delivered with the same cold precision. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just sat there for a long while, listening to the silence that followed. I heard from Sophie a few weeks later that her mother had moved out of state, something about staying with a cousin in Arizona. She hadn't spoken to anyone since the investigation closed and the restraining order was finalized. We didn't pursue criminal charges in the end. There was enough punishment in her own unraveling. But sometimes, late at night, when the apartment was still and Isla breathed softly beside me, I thought of her. Not with hatred, not even anger, just a quiet sadness, because whatever twisted thing had grown inside her heart, jealousy, bitterness, emptiness, I would never understand it, and I no longer wanted to. Mom. Sophie's voice called softly from the hallway one morning. I think Isla's awake. She stepped into the room holding my daughter, who was stretching and yawning in her little lamb-print pajamas. I took her into my arms, and Isla nuzzled against my shoulder, tiny fists clenching. Her eyes look just like yours, Sophie whispered, brushing a wisp of hair from Isla's face. But that smile, that's all Miles. I laughed. You say that every day. Because it's true every day. Sophie had moved into a small apartment 2 blocks away. She stopped by almost daily, sometimes to help, sometimes just to sit. There was no guilt in her visits now, no awkward apologies, just presence, just love. Dad came on weekends. He brought fresh fruit, groceries, and always something new for Isla, a rattle, a stuffed animal, a new storybook. One day, while cradling her in his arms, he looked at me with misty eyes. You're rewriting everything, he said. I knew what he meant. The story, the pattern, the inheritance of pain. I nodded. I'm trying. And I was. Every diaper I changed, every kiss on her forehead, every song I sang at 3 a.m. was a vow. I would never treat her the way I had been treated. She would never wonder if she was loved. Never doubt her worth. She would know it, in the air she breathed, in the way her name was spoken, in the warmth of every embrace. Because Isla was not just a child. She was a promise. One evening, as the sky burned orange outside our window and Miles rocked Isla to sleep, he looked up at me and asked, Are you happy? I paused for a moment, watching him sway with our daughter in his arms, his face lit by fading sunlight. Yes, I said softly, I really am. And I meant it. There were shadows behind us. Yes, pain that would never fully vanish. But there was also light. So much light. In Sophie's daily knock at the door. In Dad's quiet effort to rebuild what he'd once missed. In Miles's steady devotion. And most of all in Isla's sleepy sighs, her tiny heartbeat, her growing laughter. I looked out the window one last time that evening, watching the leaves sway gently in the breeze. And I knew This wasn't just a new chapter. It was a whole new book. One I would write day by day. For her. For me. For the kind of love we both deserved.